A 25-year-old heiress stood talking to a friend outside a bookshop. A moment later, she vanished, never to be seen again. As one newspaper remarked, she disappeared from one of the busiest streets on earth at the sunniest hour with thousands within sight and reach, leading the world to wonder how. Her disappearance remains unsolved and is now named New York's oldest cold case. Welcome to Without a Trace. I'm your host, Jolynn. Every file holds a mystery. Every story deserves to be heard. This is Dorothy's story. Dorothy Arnold was born on July 1st, 1885, in New York City to Francis and Mary Arnold. Dorothy was the second of 4 children, with an older brother, John, born in December of 1884, and 2 younger siblings, Dan, born in February of 1888, and Marjorie, born in August of 1891. Dorothy was raised in Manhattan in an affluent family. Her father graduated from Harvard University and was a senior partner of F.R. Arnold & Co., a company that imported fancy goods such as perfume. Dorothy's paternal aunt, Harriet Arnold, was married to Supreme Court Justice Rufus Peckham. The Arnold family was listed in the Social Register, a semi-annual publication in the United States that indexes the members of American high society. Described as being at the peak of her youth, Dorothy was rich, well-liked, blessed with prospects, and to the outer eye, completely happy. Dorothy was educated at New York's Velton School for Girls before graduating from Bryn Mawr College in Pennsylvania in 1905. After she majored in literature and language, she returned to her family home, where she attempted to begin her career as a writer. In the spring of 1910, Dorothy submitted a short story titled The Poinsettia and the Flame to McClure's magazine, which was rejected. Her friends and family were largely amused by her writing aspirations and teased her about the rejection. The rejection left her dejected and embarrassed, prompting her to run to a post office box to receive correspondence from magazines and publishing houses. During the summer of 1910, Dorothy had dutifully gone with her family to their summer home at York Harbor, Maine. Then, in mid-September, she asked her parents if she might spend a week in Cambridge with her former Bryn Mawr classmate, Theodore Bates. Her parents extended permission, so on September 16th, Dorothy left Maine. However, instead of going to Cambridge to visit Theodora, she spent a week in Boston with George Grissom Jr., a man Dorothy had met while attending Bryn Mawr and with whom she was romantically involved. George, who went by Jr., was a 40-year-old engineer who came from a wealthy Pennsylvania family with whom he still lived with. One report said his doting mother was still buying all of his shirts and ties. Dorothy arrived in Boston, where she met Junior, who had arrived the day before and checked into the Hotel Essex. On the morning of Dorothy's arrival, Junior had gone to the Hotel Lenox and reserved a room and bath for Dorothy. During the week, the two were seen together constantly, looking animated and happy. They made no effort to hide their identities or their presence in Boston. At the Lenox, Dorothy checked in under her real name and used her New York address. 2 days before leaving Boston, Dorothy visited a pawn shop where she sold $500 worth of jewelry for $60. Again, she used her real name and address. On September 24th, Dorothy returned home. Shortly after, in early October, the Arnolds returned to New York from Maine. Dorothy's parents quickly found out about the rendezvous and forbade her from continuing the relationship with Junior, as they found him unsuitable. Despite their disapproval, Dorothy continued to correspond with Junior. The two saw each other for a final time in early November, shortly before Junior left on a vacation with his parents. Dorothy then asked her father if she could rent an apartment in Greenwich Village in order to write. Francis forbade his daughter to move out of the family home, telling her that a good writer can write anywhere. She dared not push the matter further, and so Dorothy followed her father's advice, and during the next few weeks, she wrote a short story titled Lotus Leaves and submitted her short story to McClure's in November of 1910. Just before Thanksgiving, Dorothy again drew her former classmate, Theodore Bates, into the complicated web of her life when she decided to visit her friend in Washington, D.C., where she was teaching. Dorothy arrived at Theodore's home late Wednesday morning. On Thanksgiving morning, she expressed a desire to remain in bed. That same morning, a bulky envelope was delivered for Dorothy. Given that it was Thanksgiving Day, businesses were closed and no daily mail was delivered, leading everyone to wonder who delivered the envelope. Theodora always maintained that the package came by regular United States mail. After accepting the package, Theodora jumped to a fast conclusion. She decided that it contained the rejection manuscript of Dorothy's second short story. Yet, there is nothing to support this assumption. Dorothy, still laying in bed, did not open the envelope or even comment on it, but tossed it aside indifferently. Theodora, though her curiosity was piqued, asked no questions for fear of hurting her friend's feelings. On Friday, Dorothy came downstairs for breakfast, fully dressed for travel and carrying her bag. Theodora asked Dorothy why she was leaving early as she planned to stay until Monday, but Dorothy responded, "Oh, no, I always plan to leave today." At the Arnold home in New York, Dorothy's mother was equally confused when her daughter reappeared as they didn't expect her back until Monday. Again, Dorothy answered that she always intended to come home on Friday. Dorothy spent the rest of the Thanksgiving weekend at home, reading and sewing. On Monday, she paid a visit to her post office box, where she received several letters with foreign postmarks. Presumably, these came from Junior, who had arrived with his parents in Italy. Back home, she wrote Junior a letter, which he saved and later returned to the family. For the most part, the letter was cheerful and chatty, but toward the end, there appeared an intriguing paragraph. "Well, it has come back. McClure's has turned me down. All I can see ahead is a long road with no turning. Mother will always think an accident happened." On December 11th, Dorothy withdrew $36 from the bank to take some friends to lunch, followed by matinee. This was not unusual, as her monthly allowance was $100, and she usually withdrew $25 a week. On December 12th, Dorothy was expensively and modestly clad, wearing a well-tailored suit with a blue serge coat and a tight hobble skirt in a matching color. She carried both a huge silver fox mutt and a satin handbag. Dorothy descended the stairwell of her family home. In the main hall, which was later described as grandly furnished, she found her mother waiting. Dorothy informed her mother that she intended to go shopping for a dress to wear to her younger sister Marjorie's upcoming debutante party. Dorothy's mother seldom left the residence, but on this particular day, she seemed more than willing to venture outdoors. Her mother later recounted the interaction, reporting that Dorothy had merely answered, "No, Mother, don't bother. You don't feel just right, and it's no use going to the trouble. I mightn't see a thing I want, but if I do, I'll phone you." She then left the residence around 11 a.m. with approximately $25 to $30 cash in her possession. December 12th was not an especially good day weather-wise. The winter weather was raw, and strips of ice made the sidewalks treacherous. Yet, Dorothy traversed the 20 blocks on foot. She paused at the Park and Tilford's candy counter to purchase a half-pound of chocolates. The cashier recognized Dorothy as a familiar customer and without question added the purchase to the Arnold family account. It was now noon, and Dorothy continued her walk, walking an additional 32 blocks, making 52 in total. She arrived at a bookstore where she was observed leafing through books on the new fiction counter. Finally, she picked out An Engaged Girl's Sketches, a series of love stories that had appeared in the Ladies' Home Journal. Once more, she charged the purchase to her family account. With the book wrapped under her arm, Dorothy again stepped out on the cold Fifth Avenue sidewalk. Outside the bookstore, Dorothy ran into her friend, Gladys King. The day before, Gladys received an invitation to Marjorie's party. Gladys had wrote a note of acceptance in her muff, and she handed it to Dorothy with a joke about postage saved. Gladys then excused herself, explaining that she was to meet her mother for lunch. Dorothy said goodbye to Gladys, adding that she was going to walk home through Central Park. Gladys last saw Dorothy shortly before 2 p.m. when she turned to wave goodbye a second time before rounding a corner. As evening approached and Dorothy failed to appear for dinner, Frances and Mary began to worry. They feared their daughter was up to some kind of scandalous business. They eventually decided to call her friends and asked them for clues about her whereabouts. No one knew. Shortly after midnight on December 13th, Elsie Henry, a friend of Dorothy's, called the family home to see if she had returned. Dorothy's mom answered the phone and told her that she had returned home. When Elsie asked to speak to Dorothy, her mother hesitated and told Elsie that Dorothy had gone to bed with a headache. Her father initially wanted to avoid publicity over his daughter's disappearance, as he was fearful that his daughter's disappearance would draw unwanted press attention, leading to social embarrassment. It is speculated this decision was influenced by the 1909 disappearance of Adele Boaz, a 13-year-old girl who was reported missing from Central Park and later found to have run away to Boston. The family, also prominent Upper East Siders, were scandalized and shamed in the newspapers after the incident. The family contacted John Keith, a family friend and lawyer. Dorothy's brother John asked Keith to stop at the house on his way downtown that morning. Keith was reluctant to do so and asked if it could wait. "No, this is serious," John replied. After hearing the news of Dorothy's disappearance, Keith searched her bedroom and discovered that, except for the outfit she was wearing, all of her clothes and other personal belongings were accounted for. He found personal letters with foreign postmarks and 2 folders for transatlantic ocean liners on Dorothy's desk, as well as burned papers in her fireplace. The burned papers were presumed to be the rejected manuscripts she had submitted to McClure's. Over the following weeks, Keith visited jails, hospitals, and morgues in New York, Boston, and Philadelphia, but did not find any sign of Dorothy. After his search proved fruitless, he suggested that the Arnold family hire detectives from the American private investigation company, Pinkerton, to investigate. Pinkerton investigators searched area hospitals and other places that Dorothy was known to frequent, but found no trace. They questioned Dorothy's friends and former college classmates of her whereabouts, but no one had seen her. Since Keith had found literature for transatlantic ocean liners in Dorothy's room, investigators theorized that she might have eloped to a man in Europe. The agents searched marriage records, but none were found bearing Dorothy's name. Agents were then dispatched overseas to search ocean liners arriving from New York. While several women matching Dorothy's physical description were found, Dorothy herself was not. With all of the private investigators' attempts to find Dorothy proving fruitless, the family filed a missing persons report with New York Police Department in January 1911. The police advised her father to hold a press conference in order to get as much publicity as possible. Frances initially resisted the suggestion, fearing public backlash, but eventually agreed. On January 25, 1911, reporters gathered at his New York City office where Frances informed them of his daughter's disappearance and offered a $1,000 reward for information leading to her whereabouts. During the press conference, reporters asked Frances if it were possible that his daughter was still alive and had simply run away with a man, as he did not allow his daughter to date. Frances denied this, stating, "I would have been glad to see her associate with more young men than she did, especially some young men of brains and position, one whose profession or business would keep him occupied. I don't approve of young men who have nothing to do." By the end of January 1911, the New York Police Department said they still believed that Dorothy was alive and would return on her own accord. Her family, however, said they had come to believe that she was dead. Francis told the press that he believed from the start that his daughter had been attacked and killed while walking home through Central Park, and that her body had been thrown into the Central Park Reservoir. He cited 2 clues, which he would not publicly disclose, that he claimed confirmed his suspicions. Police dismissed his theory because in the days leading up to Dorothy's disappearance, the temperature in New York City had dropped to 21 degrees Fahrenheit, and the reservoir had frozen solid. Despite this, a search of Central Park was conducted anyway. No trace of Dorothy was found. When the reservoir thawed that spring, police searched the water but did not find a body. In the days following the announcement of Dorothy's disappearance, the New York Police Department distributed her picture, physical description, and information about the reward through the United States, Canada, and Mexico. The New York Times continued to cover the story on a near-daily basis. The publicity led to investigators receiving calls from people across the United States who claimed to have seen Dorothy. These calls were investigated but proved to be false. The Arnold family also received 2 ransom notes from alleged kidnappers who demanded upwards of $5,000 for her return. The kidnapping claims proved to be hoaxes. In early February 1911, Arnold's father received a postcard signed Dorothy bearing a New York City postmark that read, "I am safe." While the writing matched his daughter's, Francis said he believed that someone had copied her handwriting from samples that were featured in the newspaper and that the postcard was nothing more than a cruel joke. Around the same time, a jeweler in San Francisco claimed a woman he recognized as Dorothy had him engrave a diamond wedding ring for her on January 7th. Shortly after this, the New York Police Department announced that they had decided to stop investigating Dorothy's disappearance, saying they believed she was dead. The deputy police commissioner stated, "That now seems the only reasonable way of looking at the case. The girl has now been missing for 75 days, and in all that time, not a single clue has been found that was worth the name. We have no evidence that a crime has been committed, and the case is now one of a missing person and nothing more." Meanwhile, reporters were still focusing on Francis's comment regarding Dorothy's dating life. They soon discovered that Francis's comment was in reference to Junior, and soon the newspapers revealed that the two had at one time called themselves engaged. After Dorothy's disappearance, Junior was found vacationing with his parents in Florence, Italy. The Arnold family sent him a telegram asking for information about Dorothy's disappearance. It read, "Dorothy Arnold missing. Family prostrated. Cable if you know anything about her whereabouts." Guests at the hotel recalled that as Junior read the telegram, he seemed agitated, and some thought he murmured, "Arnold is making serious trouble." In a return telegram, Junior denied any knowledge of her whereabouts and claimed to know nothing about her disappearance, writing, "No, absolutely nothing, Junior." On January 16th, clerks at the hotel where Junior was staying saw a veiled woman they believed to be Dorothy with a young man. According to staff, Junior met with the man and the veiled woman and had an earnest talk lasting 2 hours. The staff could not hear the conversation, but noted that the woman appeared to be greatly agitated. Eventually, the veiled woman and the young man left, taking with them a packet of letters. It didn't take long for everyone to realize the young man was Dorothy's older brother John, but who, the world wondered, was the heavily veiled woman? When John returned alone to New York at the end of January, he refused to say, but some quick detective work revealed that the veiled lady was none other than Mary Arnold. It turns out that in early January 1911, Dorothy's mother Mary and her brother John traveled to Italy by ship to forcibly interrogate Junior. They met him in his room at the hotel on January 16th, where Junior continued to maintain that he knew nothing of the disappearance. Mary and John demanded that Junior give over the letters that Dorothy had sent him. John later claimed the letters contained nothing of importance and said that he destroyed them. Upon his return to the United States in February of 1911, Junior told the press that he intended to marry Dorothy once she was found, of course on the condition that her mother approve of the marriage. Mary later told reporters that she would never approve of the union. Now back in America, Junior spent thousands of dollars for ads in major newspapers asking Dorothy to come home. Several ads were spotted in the personal columns where Junior begged Dorothy to communicate with him, but no word ever came. Numerous theories and rumors regarding Dorothy's disappearance continued to arise. One theory was that she had slipped on an icy sidewalk, struck her head, and was in a hospital with total amnesia. This theory did not pan out as there were no women matching her description in area hospitals who had sustained a concussion. Other theories arose that she had been drugged and abducted, but that theory was considered unlikely as she was last seen on a busy street in mid-afternoon. Junior, for his part, theorized that she had died by suicide because she was despondent over her writing career. After her second short story was rejected, Dorothy wrote a letter to Junior expressing her disappointment over the lack of progress as a writer and alluded to suicide, stating, "Well, it has come back. McClure's turned me down. Failure stares me in the face. All I can see ahead is a long road with no turning. Mother will always think an accident has happened." In favor of a suicide theory, the New York World dredged up a story of Andrew Griscom, a young cousin of Junior's whom Dorothy had met at Bryn Mawr. Andrew had leaped from the deck of a transatlantic liner because his family would not allow him to marry an English governess. This theory might seem to be born from the steamship folders found on Dorothy's desk. However, no passengers were reported missing from ocean crossing liners during the early days of her disappearance. A more reasonable possibility is that Dorothy leaped from the Fall River side wheeler, which left New York at 5 p.m. daily. Suicides favored these overnight boats, for no passenger list was kept. Passengers merely walked aboard, chose a cabin, and paid on getting off. Some of Dorothy's family members and friends also said they believed that she had died by suicide, but felt she killed herself because her relationship with Junior was faltering. One of the more widespread rumors was that Dorothy had become pregnant, had sought an abortion, had died during or after the botched procedure, and had been secretly buried or cremated. This rumor gained some credibility when, in April of 1916, an illegal abortion clinic operating out of the basement of a home in Bellevue, Pennsylvania, was raided by police. The clinic was run by Dr. C.C. Meredith and became notoriously known as the House of Mystery after numerous women from the area went missing after visiting the clinic. One of the doctors who worked at the clinic, Dr. H.E. Lutz, testified to the New York County District Attorney that Dr. Meredith told him that Dorothy had died there after experiencing complications from an abortion. Dr. Lutz claimed that, like many of the women who had undergone abortions at the clinic and died, Dorothy's body was burned in a furnace. While the district attorney said he believed that Dorothy had died at the clinic, her father said he thought the story was ridiculous and absolutely untrue. John Keith later told the media that 2 months after Dorothy disappeared, he got a tip from an attorney in Pittsburgh that she was in a local sanatorium. Keith claimed that he and 2 detectives traveled to Pittsburgh but discovered that the woman was not Dorothy. Over 5 years after Dorothy's disappearance, in April 1916, a convicted felon in Rhode Island named Edward Glenarus, who was imprisoned for attempted extortion, claimed that he was paid $250 to bury the body of a young woman in December 1910. Glenarus claimed that an acquaintance known only as Little Louie hired him to drive the woman from a home in New Rochelle to West Point, New York. In New Rochelle, Glenarus said that he and Little Louie were met by 2 men, one of who was named Doc, and the other whom Glenarus described as wealthy and well-dressed, which matched Junior's physical description. Glenarus and Little Louie then loaded the unconscious woman in a car and drove her to a house in Weehawken, New Jersey. During the drive, Glenarus said that Little Louie told him that the woman was Dorothy Arnold. Glenarus also said that he recognized Dorothy and was able to identify a ring on the index finger of her left hand that matched a ring she owned. The next day, Little Louie contacted Glenarus to, quote, finish the job. Upon returning to the house, Doc informed the men that the woman had died at the home during an operation. Glenress said that he and little Louie then drove the woman's body back to the home in New Rochelle, wrapped the body in a sheet, and buried it in the cellar. Glenress initially told the story to a prison warden who then reported it to authorities. However, upon subsequent interviews with law enforcement, Glenress acted confused and claimed that he knew nothing of Dorothy's whereabouts. Police followed up on the initial claim and excavated the cellars of several homes in the area, but did not locate any human remains. Francis denied Glenress's claims, telling reporters, "So far it appears on the face of the man's story he was talking utter nonsense." Years after Dorothy disappeared, numerous alleged sightings from all over the United States were still being reported. Police continued to investigate these reports, but all proved to be false. The Arnold family also continued to receive letters from women claiming to be Dorothy. These were also investigated and also proved to be false. One such letter came from an attorney in California who claimed that Dorothy was living as Ella Nervins in Los Angeles, a claim that her father disputed. The case regained attention on April 6, 1921, when Captain John H. Ayers of the Bureau of Missing Persons claimed that Dorothy's fate had been known to the Bureau and her family for some time. The captain refused to elaborate and would not say if Dorothy was alive or dead. The following day, Ayers claimed that he was misquoted and denied that Dorothy's fate was known. Francis spent approximately $250,000 trying to find his daughter. He continued to maintain his belief that she had been kidnapped and murdered. Francis passed away on April 6, 1922, and in his will, he intentionally left Dorothy out, stating that he was satisfied that she was not alive. Dorothy's mother, Mary, did not share her husband's opinion that their daughter had been murdered. She remained hopeful that she was still alive. Mary passed away on December 29, 1928. Shortly after her death, John Keith publicly stated he believed that Dorothy had died by suicide because of her failed writing career. In the obituary for Mary, the search for Dorothy was described as the great search of the age, a search that did much to develop modern newspaper police coverage. Dorothy's case is no longer under investigation due to the amount of time that has passed since she vanished, but her disappearance remains unsolved. Thank you for listening to Without a Trace with your host, Jolynn. I hope you enjoyed our deep dive into Dorothy's disappearance. If you enjoyed today's podcast, please subscribe and follow us on social media. Join me next week as I dive into another case.